Nolan and Wyatt's dad had a secret friendship that we weren't even in.
Yeah, they were like best friends.
We would go over to Wyatt's house, and Nolan, we would all be in the backyard, whatever, doing something, and Nolan would be inside on the couch with Wyatt's dad, and they would just be cutting it up all night.
Yeah,
I bet you $1,000,000 if it was 5 black boys and 1 white boy on the boat. By now, there would have been an arrest, there would have been a warrant, there would have been a seizure, but because America doesn't believe that Black Lives Matter, they trying to act offended because we want to ask the question, what happened to our brother? And when we ask the question, what happened? The response is we're still gathering information. We're waiting on toxicology, waiting on the grand jury. Am I my brother's keeper? That's the question underneath every delayed subpoena, every sealed file, every complaint filed against a grieving mother's nursing license. Instead of asking whoever left her son on the island, the institutional Mississippi still muttering Kane's excuse, it's not my problem. I wanted to come to Mississippi today from Georgia to let the system and to let the establishment know, let that be the last time you try to intimidate a black mother. She's got every right to fight for her son, to stand for her son, to question her son, and you better not mess with her nurse's license. Leave that black woman alone.
Well, we actually have proof that Grandpa Jerry was actually on Horns Island as well, which makes sense why he was able to call the captain, because he physically was watching it. Now, who was Wyatt on the phone with? Well, we know he was on the phone with Cito Call, but let me show you Grandpa Jerry.
White-haired old man. Look, I just want you.
And she also gave us a little specialty on Wyatt. And Now I thank her for that treat, because we all been asking the same question. Where is Wyatt? Why haven't we heard from Wyatt? Where are his boats that one we know was missing from the MDMR report? We just have no information, no nothing on him. He is seemingly in the dark, like he's just disappeared somewhere. So where is he? And why haven't we heard from him? Just asking. My opinions, just asking. And thank you, Miss Trina. Thank you, Queen. I appreciate you.
Nolan Wells. Guys, I got receipts here about the district attorney and what's going on in this case that I think is going to blow things away. You want to be the smartest kid on the block with regard to information? Trust what I'm about to say here. And with 31 years of homicide experience and running a prosecutor's office, this is big, guys. And people talk about bombshells. This is a bombshell. Well, wait a minute. I thought we don't release the results of autopsy results in Nolan Wells. Well, here's a case where they had in the very same county released autopsy results, preliminary, not even final autopsy results, and declared it a homicide. Why hasn't that happened in the Nolan Wells case? And by the way, saying that we wait until the matters presented to the grand jury, yeah, that's true, as she indicated, for when there's a non-natural death. But what she's not telling you is why there isn't an arrest made for anybody who may have perpetrated this crime, because certainly if you look at these articles, not only do they tell you the autopsy results, not only do they ask the public for information, but they actually make arrests of individuals prior to it going before the grand jury. Also, why didn't they get a warrant for the phone? Well, if you have probable cause to believe evidence of a crime is on the phone, then you would go and you would get a warrant. Now, I am not saying, I have no horse in the race here, what's going on or not, but what I am is reading inside baseball here. When you go to before the grand jury, it is a secret proceeding. And you know what? You can't get the information that's being revealed. The grand jury is not only a place where they say you can indict a ham sandwich as a prosecutor's playground, but it's also a place where you don't indict a ham sandwich, maybe. You can do whatever you want in that grand jury. So this lack of transparency, lack of press conferences, lack of giving us basic information that, as I said in my previous videos, is not a violation of their ethics rules whatsoever. You can go consult that and consult my long form video here. Please, before you comment, if you want to become the most knowledgeable person based on somebody that's got the level of experience that I do, please go to YouTube and look at the long form 14 15-minute video that will explain this in detail. But I believe it's not what you see, it's what you don't see here. You don't see an arrest. You don't see a release of the autopsy results. You have her going into the grand jury where it's a secret proceeding. And I think all things are being set up, at least as of today's date, to what they call no-bill this case. And no one will ever be able to see what was and wasn't presented to the grand jury, because the prosecutor's not giving us any data information, certainly not making us feel comfortable that a proper investigation is being done. I think that's a huge error, huge mistake on her part. And you can also go to my YouTube video and look at what I did in terms of a press conference after a grand jury no-billed a police shooting of a minority citizen. So at least, hopefully, she's going to do something so that the public can be confident in the investigation. Anyway, little data points that are huge. She says no autopsy, no arrest. I can't talk about the case. Well, they certainly seem to be doing it in other cases involving drownings, may I add.
Nolan Wells, the blackout in Gary, Indiana, public lynchings of black people. What do those three things have in common? All of these were stories that the mainstream news media did not report until we started making them trend on social media. And by we, I mean black folks. I'm talking about us. Sorry if you're not tribe. I'd be jealous if I were you, but that's not the point of this conversation. The point of this conversation is this. We know that the algorithms are trash. We know that the algorithm is built against us and people who talk about what we talk about. We know that these algorithms and these platforms are controlled by billionaires who want to control us. And we have more power than we think. So when we decide to get in unison, be one band, one sound, we can actually dictate the terms of the news instead of the news dictating the terms to us. Never ever forget your power and keep on saying them names. And make sure that you're subscribed to Black-owned media, independent media, Joy Reid, Roland Martin, Don Lemon, The Root, The Griot. They are telling our stories responsibly, with care, and with truth. All right? We ain't got to pay attention to them people. We got our own.
This is my prediction. This is what happens in these cases. They have a case. They know it's no racial component. There's no evidence of race, but they know there can be some money made. Who do you go to when you want to make some money? You don't go to your local guy. This didn't happen across the country. This happened in Mississippi. You don't go to an attorney in Mississippi. You don't go to a representative there in your locale. You go to Benjamin Crump. Get a national figure involved. Immediately you raise $700,000 on a GoFundMe.
A mother let her son go out on the water with the friends he'd known for years. That's it. That's the whole decision she made. And in the weeks since, someone looked at a grieving mother, fighting for the truth about how her son died, and said, "They are in this for the money." I was heartbroken hearing this. On the day of Nolan's funeral, while his family was burying their child, someone was already on camera calculating what they stood to gain from it, rattling off Ben Crump's past settlement numbers like a price list, and suggesting this family might never have to work again once the payout hits. Sit with that. A father buries his 18-year-old son, and someone's already doing math on it, not asking if they deserve answers, asking what they're worth. We're not going to pretend that didn't hurt to hear, because it did. Here's what Christine herself actually said, directly, on camera, this week. Not through a spokesperson, not through a press release. Crump's team didn't come looking for them. Someone in their own circle brought the two together. That's the opposite of the story being told about them. Now here's what she's actually doing about it. Nolan's parents just subpoenaed every single call made about that boat between 2 and 6 o'clock that afternoon. Every dispatch recording, every document, and CTO's own training manual for what a crew is supposed to do the moment somebody calls and says their boat is sinking. Because somewhere in that timeline, a call went out saying help was needed. And somewhere after that, a grandfather got on the phone with the captain, and the help never came. Was that a normal cancellation, or was that the call that decided everything? Nolan's family wants that exact call, in full, and they're not stopping until they get it. Tonight, we're going to give you both sides of this fully, and we're going to get into something people have been doing to Christine while she's still grieving.
Wait, text messages were just released between Nolan's mom and Warren. that can answer a lot of questions. And I need you to, I'm gonna go through these text messages one by one. You tell me, does it look like somebody like Warren is trying to hide something, or does it look like he's being a true friend? Now, first of all, I thought that Nolan's dad showed up unannounced as the way, Warren and them told the story. Here's a text message, July 5th, 2 in the morning. Nolan's dad is out the house to pick up the key. Remember, he was trying to get the key from Jax. He said Jax couldn't find it, or it was taking forever. Then somebody else found it, and he didn't trust Jax after that. So then here's the next one. That day in the afternoon, hey, Warren, what kind of sunglasses did Nolan wear? I'm pretty sure Ray-Bans, Mrs. Christine. This is Warren. Then Warren says, hey, Miss Christine, just wanted to check in. We went out this morning to look, and I've been on and off the phone with Jackson County Sheriff's Office today. If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. She says, thank you. Warren says, we are all praying for your family. We appreciate it. Then it gets deeper. Now, right here, she asked Warren what boat he was on, or what boat Nolan was on. He says, Nolan went out on the 22 Triton offshore, and I was on the 24 tie line. I ain't heard much about the 24 tie line. On the way out, we were on separate boats. I went back on the Triton DMR, and the sheriff's office has all this information. Then if you look again, Monday, July 6th, 1:37 p.m., hey, Warren, can you collect any of Nolan's items left at Jack's house? So it was still items after her father went there? I don't know. Then here's Warren again. Good morning, Miss Christine. I just wanted to let you know that my family and I have been praying for you and your family. Nolan was one of my best friends since we were in 8th grade together. You and Mr. Elmore raised one of the best men I've ever met. I wish I could be there today, but I would never want to take the attention off of your family and Nolan and be a distraction. Thank you for being the best parents that Nolan could have had. This was the day of the funeral, that Monday. Now, these are cut off. I want to know the full message up here, because this is where it seemed like it got a little spicy. It appears Miss Christine, Nolan's mom, said exactly where you saw him last. I'm sorry I am asking you to repeat this. 3 p.m. West Tip, north side of Horn Island. Where did you guys launch for him? He sent the location, and I don't know why this is blurred out. We launched the boats yesterday evening and left from here this morning. As the Wells family searches for answers and Warren and them trying to say that they had nothing to do with it and don't know anything, we are trying to find out what is true. But we do know a lot has been misinformed, a lot of misinformation, and I don't like it. Make sure you stay tuned for more details. Justice for Nolan Wells.
New text messages between Christine and Warren just surfaced. At first, they appear to support Warren's public story. Several make him look helpful, concerned, cooperative. But buried inside the exchange is one sentence about the boats that we're going to test directly against something Warren said in a separate interview. And what we find isn't quite what either side of this case has been arguing. First message, July 5th, around 2 in the morning. Nolan's father goes to the house to collect a key. That visit has sometimes been described publicly as unannounced, possibly even confrontational. But the messages suggest communication and logistics were already underway. That doesn't prove the later description was false. It does raise a precise question. If the visit was being coordinated by text, what exactly did unannounced mean? A visit that follows an ongoing text exchange isn't the same category of event as someone appearing at a door with no warning at all. That distinction matters because unannounced has done real work in how this specific moment gets remembered publicly, and a documented, time-stamped exchange is a different kind of evidence than anyone's memory of how tense that moment felt. The next messages actually help Warren's side of the story. Christine asks what sunglasses Nolan wore. Warren quickly answers, pretty sure Ray-Bans. He later says they searched that morning, that he'd been speaking with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, and that Christine could contact him if she needed anything. Taken at face value, this looks cooperative. Warren is responding to questions, volunteering information, offering support. That deserves to be acknowledged, the same way we've acknowledged every genuinely supportive detail from anyone else in this case. These aren't the messages of someone going quiet or dodging contact. They're proactive, specific, and offered without being asked twice. But then, Christine asks a different question, and Warren's answer introduces the most important detail in the entire exchange. Pause here, because Warren describes two different journeys. Going out, Warren says he was aboard the 24-foot tide line, while Nolan was aboard the 22-foot Triton. Coming back, Warren says, "I went back on the Triton." Outbound Warren, tide line Nolan, Triton. Return Warren, Triton. That means Warren says he switched boats at some point. The question isn't whether he switched. He tells Christine that he did. The question is when. When did Warren switch boats? Did Warren board the Triton before the mechanical problem began? Was he already aboard when Sea Tow was contacted? Did he witness the emergency directly? We now have Warren's own answer to part of that, in his own words, from a separate interview, and it's worth hearing exactly as he said it. That's a direct answer to the timing question, in Warren's own words. He says he moved onto the Triton specifically because of the boat issues, meaning he joined that boat as part of responding to the emergency, not that he was already standing on it before any of this started. Read plainly, that actually answers the before or after question in his favor. He's describing himself arriving in response to a crisis already underway, not present for its actual start. But listen again to what he calls the boat he left, to Christine. In the text message, he said he started the day on the tide line. Here, talking to Tatum, he says he left the Palm Beach. Those are two different boat names for wherever he says he actually began that day. In the outbound account, the one told to Christine, Warren traveled from his location to Tideline. In the second outbound account, the one told to Tatum, Warren traveled to Palm Beach instead. But both accounts agree on one thing. Warren went to Triton because of the boat issues. That's not a contradiction about the big picture. Both accounts agree he ended up on the Triton, and both agree it was tied to the emergency, not before it. It's a smaller, more specific discrepancy. Which boat did he actually start the day on? People do occasionally misname things under stress, months apart, in casual conversation. That's a real, human possibility, not automatically a sign of anything deliberate. But it's worth naming plainly, the same way we've named every other small inconsistency in this case, because the honest answer to which boat should be the same every single time it's asked. Those questions matter because an ordinary boat switch and a boat switch during an unfolding emergency are two very different details, and Warren's own account, now heard directly, describes the second one, joining specifically because of the trouble, not sitting on it beforehand. If you're watching these messages laid out one at a time like this, we want to actually hear from you. Does Warren's own explanation, that he moved to the Triton because of the boat issues, settle this for you? Or does the Tideline versus Palm Beach discrepancy still leave something unresolved? Drop your honest read in the comments. On the morning of Nolan's funeral, Warren sent another deeply personal message. He called Nolan one of his best friends since 8th grade, praised Christine and Elmore as parents, and said he would stay away from the funeral because he didn't want attention taken away from Nolan's family. On its face, it's compassionate and self-aware. Nothing in that message proves deception or wrongdoing. If anything, choosing absence specifically to keep a funeral focused on someone else is the kind of instinct that's hard to fake convincingly in writing to a mother on that exact morning. Christine then asks Warren where he last saw Nolan and where the group launched. Warren reportedly identifies the west tip, north side of Horn Island, and sends a location pin. The circulated version hides the exact location. That blur doesn't prove Warren concealed anything. It may have been added later to protect a private dock or address, but the original, unblurred location could still be valuable. It would give investigators another fixed point to compare against the boat timeline, an independent coordinate to test against GPS data, witness accounts, and everything else already gathered. A single pin, verified and placed correctly, is exactly the kind of small, boring, technical detail that could quietly do real work in resolving a much bigger question. It's the same principle behind every other piece of hard data we've covered throughout this case. A coordinate doesn't have an agenda, and it doesn't change its story depending on who's asking. Here's the real question worth sitting with before we move on. Now that we have Warren's own explanation, he moved to the Triton because of the boat issues. Does that actually close the timing question, or does the Tideline versus Palm Beach discrepancy still leave a smaller thread open? It's worth naming why a private text message and a public podcast interview carry different kinds of weight. The text to Christine came before Warren had time to prepare, before any narrative had formed around that day. Just a friend answering a grieving mother directly, in the moment. The Tatum interview came weeks later, with time to think it through, an audience to consider, and a story already taking shape. Neither one is automatically more accurate, but it's worth noting that on the core question, was he on the Triton because of the emergency or before it, both accounts actually agree, which is worth more than either one on its own. So these messages cut in two directions. Warren appears responsive, supportive, and willing to help Nolan's family. And on the boat question specifically, his own words, in two separate accounts, months apart, agree that he joined the Triton because of the trouble, not before it. What's still unresolved is smaller than we first thought. Not when he boarded relative to the emergency, but which boat he actually started the day on, since he's named two different ones. That doesn't prove wrongdoing, and it doesn't prove deception either. It's a narrower, more specific loose end than the one we opened this part with. Proof that testing a claim against everything else on record can resolve part of a question even while leaving another part open. One more honest answer before we move on. Does Warren's own explanation settle the boat question for you, or does naming two different starting boats still bother you? Tell us where you actually land.
And Christine Walmsley is subpoenaing the hell out of them right now. She has filed a series of legal subpoenas targeting social media, technology, and marine service companies to investigate her son's final movements and communications surrounding his death. Now, social media and tech companies, as we know, she filed in Jackson County Chancery Court. The initial subpoenas target Meta, Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, Snap, Snapchat, WhatsApp, and the tracking app Life360 to secure GPS logs, messages, and deleted content. Marine and dispatch records. Additional subpoenas target marine services, including Sea Tow and Ward Marine, requesting dispatch logs, radio recordings, and communications tied to the July 4th incident. Now, the family's legal team is seeking clarity after reporting discrepancies in location tracking and concerns over wiped or deleted messages from his phone. So in layman's term, thank God we are going to find out what happened on those Sea Tow logs. We're going to get all the recorded calls. We're going to find out who's on it. I'd like to find out who that park ranger is. Can we subpoena the park ranger? Thank God for the team, the dream team as we're calling them, because now we are going to get some answers that they have not wanted to give us.
While all of this was surfacing, Nolan's parents weren't sitting still. Christine is subpoenaing them right now, and we mean that literally, Because this isn't two document requests anymore. It's a full legal offensive, filed directly in Jackson County Chancery Court, and it's aimed at almost every company that touched Nolan's final hours. Let's start with the part that's genuinely bigger than anything we've covered on this thread so far. Christine's legal team filed subpoenas against Meta, meaning both Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, WhatsApp, and the location tracking app Life360. Every single one of them is being ordered to hand over GPS logs, messages, and deleted content, not just what's currently visible on an account, what was deleted. Here's why that word, deleted, should stop you cold. The family's own legal team has stated the reason for these subpoenas directly. They've found discrepancies in Nolan's location tracking, and they have real concerns that messages may have been wiped from his phone. That's not a vague fishing expedition. That's a specific, stated legal basis, tied to specific platforms, aimed at recovering exactly the kind of content someone would need a court order to get back once it's gone from a device itself. Think about what that actually means for every argument we've had in this case so far about what may or may not still exist. We've talked before about the technical reality that deleted content on a phone doesn't necessarily vanish forever. Recently deleted photos sit in a recovery folder for weeks. Unread Snapchat messages remain live on the company's own servers for a window of time before they're gone for good. A subpoena aimed directly at these platforms is exactly the mechanism that could reach past whatever's visible on a device and pull the actual server-side record, the version that exists independent of anyone's phone, independent of anyone's choice to delete something locally. If anything was wiped, this is the legal tool built specifically to find out whether the platforms themselves still have it. And Christine isn't stopping at social media. The same legal push includes marine and dispatch records, separate subpoenas targeting Seatow Services International and Ward Marine Services, which operates as Seatow South Mississippi, both ordered to produce dispatch logs, radio recordings, and every communication tied to the July 4th incident. Filed on behalf of Nolan's estate, the same day after what would have been Nolan's 19th birthday. And buried inside that marine subpoena is the one call this entire case has been waiting to actually hear. The subpoenas ask for the same core window across both fronts. Everything connected to July 4th, from 2 in the afternoon to 6 that evening. Calls, dispatch recordings, documents showing exactly who handled the response and how. There's a second request tucked into the Seatow subpoena that deserves real attention on its own. Nolan's parents also want the company's own training materials, the actual written procedures for how a crew is supposed to handle a report of a boat taking on water or sinking. That's not a request for gossip or speculation. That's a request for the actual standard, so that whatever happened that day can finally be measured against it directly, instead of argued about based on impressions. Here's why that specific request matters. If there's a documented protocol for what a crew does the moment someone calls saying they're sinking, then whatever actually happened next, dispatch, delay, cancellation, can be compared against that protocol in black and white. No more arguing about what should have happened. An actual standard, obtained directly from the company, sitting right next to whatever the call logs actually show. Now, the Ward Marine subpoena goes even deeper, and this is the part that's been the center of speculation for weeks. It specifically requests all calls tied to the incident, including dispatch calls and communications between the captain and anyone else connected to that response. Read plainly. That means whatever the grandfather actually said to that captain on the phone is now formally part of what Nolan's own family is demanding to see. It's worth being precise about what makes this specific piece of the subpoena different from everything else being requested. Most of what's being asked for, the training manuals, the general dispatch logs, is about establishing a baseline, a standard to measure everything else against. The captain's communications are different. That's not a standard. That's the actual specific conversation everyone in this case has been speculating about since the very beginning, without ever having the real thing in front of them. Every theory, every guess, every argument about what the grandfather might have said has been built entirely on second-hand accounts and assumptions. A subpoenaed recording, if it exists and gets released, replaces all of that guessing with an actual transcript. We've asked this question before in this case, and it's worth asking it again, now that there's an actual legal mechanism trying to answer it. A call went out that day saying a boat needed help. At some point after that,